snowboard.com. We are here checking out the Nitro Squash in a 142. The Nitro Squash is a backcountry ripper, a freeride ripper with a little bit of a freestyle attitude. It comes with a sintered base. It's also directional and tapered. And the camber profile is basically a positive camber. It has a big old nose on here, but the contact points with the snow are outside of the bindings. And then you get like this drawn out nose, and then on the tail it just kind of is pretty connected. It is a little on the stiffer side. And I kind of expected this board to feel stiffer than it did. I feel like the torsional flex isn't that stiff, and so I was able to kind of twist the board and get it to turn quickly for me. But it has a nice stable flex where you're riding down the hill. It's not super chattery or anything. It just kind of like holds a nice stable line. And it is a little bit wider under the waist width for a 142 if you compare it to a lot of other women's boards. So it's a little bit of that volume shifted, shorter, fatter ride. You could size down if you wanted to, or you can ride your size and just get a little bit more of a beefy board. I ride a 142 in my daily driver, and I didn't feel like this was too much of a board for me. A lot of times the volume shifted boards that I've ridden in my actual size feel much bigger than they are, but something about the Squash didn't feel that way. It just kind of felt like a more like free ride board, but it wasn't slower to turn, I don't feel. So I feel like it would be okay to ride this in your board width, or if you just want a little bit more of the slashy surfy style feel, then maybe size down. So it's not really aggressive. It's not like a hard charger. It's kind of more in that medium hard charger range where you can still play on it. And I felt like that was in its personality, was a little bit of playful. But then, you know, it also comes with the benefits of being able to float in powder and then also carving. Sometimes these boards that are really directional, I always think they're going to feel really directional. And that wasn't really the case with the Squash. I mean, the nose was there for sure, but I didn't feel like I was riding an uber directional board. So it's a little bit of like a mellower directional ride, maybe a good intro to like these more alternative freestyle shapes. If you're thinking you want to get into it, but you don't want to go full on like crazy directional, then maybe the Squash could be a good intro to that. So I got this on pretty traditional spring riding days. It was icy in the morning, going to, you know, that mid magic hour where everything is softening up but not slushy, and then going to just full on California slush riding. And honestly, it like felt pretty good in almost all of those conditions. The edge hold on the ice in the morning wasn't amazing, but it did hold an edge. You know, there's no side cut disruption on this board. You just get that positive camber to connect you to the snow, and it felt pretty good. So it was like a high-end and medium edge hold. You know, much better than something that's a reverse camber or something like that, or has more rocker in it. So in riding this at Mammoth, I rode it in the steeps, which felt pretty decent. Again, it didn't feel like a hard charger. It was somewhere in the middle, kind of like the all mountain board where, you know, it can kind of dabble in a lot of different areas, but in a free ridey way, if that makes sense. So I did like it on the steeps. It was pretty stable up there when turning, and then like in the uneven snow, it could get a little bit chattery and a little bit weird because sometimes the bigger nose kind of like flexes on you if you hit a bump at speed, and then you get a little bit of kickback from the board, but it was definitely fun to ride in the steeps for sure. I feel like it was a little bit more of like a medium radius turner. You could make small radius turns, but I feel like medium is where it wanted to be. It's not really that like big old floaty turner, but it likes to keep a nice consistent kind of medium turn radius. And then bringing it down to the Groomers, you know, obviously it has a great shape for carving. It's directional. You get that positive camber. You can ride it all the way back to the tail. It's got the wider waist width, so you can really tip it over and not worry about boot drag or anything like that. And you get that nice stable flex. I felt like I was able to bend the board, being a lighter rider. So that being said, if you are a heavier rider, it might feel a little bit more on the softer side. a little bit more maneuverable. But for me, it felt like a nice solid kind of all mountain flex where I could get response out of it and get performance out of it, but not so much that I wasn't inspired to kind of play on it on my way down the mountain. You know, you can ride switch on it. The tail isn't too crazy swallow-tailed, and it does come off the ground a little bit, so you can ride switch, but it's not ideal. It's kind of meant for a more directional ride, obviously. Off piste, I feel like it turns quick enough to ride it off piste. In the bumps, the nose got a little bit in the way sometimes when the turns got tight and I didn't quite have the perfect timing. So maybe not a super ideal mogul board, you know, or if you see like big old bumps, it can do it, but it's not like the best. But it can handle in the trees, because then you don't get like those giant ruts like moguls get. The trees are a little bit more evened out in the snow, and it's definitely quick enough to turn. If you got powder day, it would be a lot of fun in the trees, I think. You know, with the powder on this big old nose up here, and it's a wider waist width, and you get the taper, so the tail's gonna sink down along with that swallowtail shape. It'll make for a really fun powder board, I think. And I like a good powder board with some nice positive camber, because then you get a little bit of performance. You can make it from the powder field to the bottom of the lift again, you know, over the groomers and the icy crud or whatever it is you need to do. So definitely like would be a lot of fun in the powder, I think. And especially since it's so quick to turn on snow and in slush, I feel like it's gonna be quick to turn in the powder as well. So as far as freestyle goes, you know, obviously it's not a freestyle board, but I liked that it had the flex where I felt okay to play on it. You know, so like definitely able to butter it on the nose. There's not much room for buttering it off the tail. You don't get much tail there, but the nose has a massive platform where you can bend it. The nose seems pretty stiff, so the bending point almost is like maybe right here, right on the circle. So you get a nice solid pop from that positive camber profile. And again, it didn't feel like it was too stiff where I couldn't get energy back from the board. So I felt like I was able to pop it really nicely. And the tail is somewhat stiff so that you can like have that nice platform in ollies. And you know, it has a nice stable platform to land on too. So maybe more for the natural drops, maybe rock drops or little cliff drops or just like little hits you can find all over the mountain would be great for the squash. So who is this board for? I feel like it would be good for an advanced expert rider, somebody who likes that directional ride, who is into free riding and carving, but also wants a board that can float in powder. But you know, wants a board that can also have a lot of fun on the groomers, because it's not just a powder board and a carving board. That's just kind of where the personality leads you to, but I like that it is maneuverable enough and playful enough. It's got a little playful spirit to it, to where you can kind of play all mountain as well. If you want a directional, tapered, fun board, maybe check out the Nitro Squash.